have the xAPI cohort on social media. So make sure if you're on Twitter, using that hashtag xAPI cohort, tag the GNOME, xAPI GNOME, tag us at Torrance Learning. We'll share, we'll communicate. The only way we can continue to grow our xAPI cohort community is if we keep talking it up. So welcome. This is the first web session of 12, so we're really excited to have everyone here. Uh-oh. That was a transition error, so I'm gonna add in, I'm gonna upload my slides again. I don't know what happened to them. So this is a Adobe Connect issue right now. So while I'm uploading the document, we'll get started once that's uploading. So folks might be seeing the spinning wheel, but we're back. Okay, so what we're going to do today, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get to know each other a little better, see who's in the cohort with us. I see we have 60 folks joining us online, 61. It's continuing to grow. We're going to talk a little bit about how xAPI cohort works. We're going to talk a little bit about what xAPI is anyway and some use case. We'll talk about how to be successful in the xAPI cohort, and we have some panelists joining us who are cohort members who are going to talk about their experiences. So feel free to use that chat and ask any questions, and then we'll talk about what's happening next. Now we're looking at this screen with a number of 342, and I just checked, and that number should actually be 364. That is the number of folks who have registered for or signed up for Spring 2020 cohort. So this community is huge. You'll notice in our Slack channel we have over 2,000 participants. That means we've connected with over 2,000 people through cohort, and this is the 10th session. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so excited that folks are joining, that folks know each other, and that we're forging community together. So as we get started, I want to ask you a question. I want to know, how do you identify who's in the cohort with us? So I'm going to put a poll on the screen and select how you identify. Can you all see the poll? I see some instructional designers, project managers, learning engineers, lots of IDs. Lots of IDs. All right, I'm going to end that poll. It's looking like we're majority ID teams. We have some learning engineers, some software developers, some learning experience, some folks that are not on that list. We got some multitaskers I see in the chat. Welcome. We're going to need all of these brains and all of these experiences in cohort. We all play an important role. I myself identify as an ID. It takes all of us to make learning happen. So I'm going to ask you, how many cohorts have you participated in? I'm going to put that poll on the screen now. I want to know how many of us are new, has never been or done a cohort. We got some returning cohorts. All right. We have lots of returners, and we have lots of new folks. So I was new last cohort. The only thing I could do last cohort was spell xAPI, and here we are talking about it together. So I'm really excited to have new folks here, and I'm also really excited to have experienced folks here to help us new folks along the way. Are folks having a hard time with sound? Can everyone hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me, or put yes in that chat to let me know that folks can hear me. Hearing some static. Okay. Okay. Folks seem to be hearing me fine. I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to ask, what are you looking to learn this cohort? What are you looking to do? It's really important to think about, what would you like to work on in this cohort? What would you like to work on? All right, we got some use cases, retrieving statements from an LRS, SharePoint, Pebble design and development, how to use xAPI, everything, Captivate in xAPI, how to pilot an xAPI project, what is an LRS and how to use it. Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so that's who we are. We have lots of people with lots of goals around how to use xAPI. We're all coming from different backgrounds in the learning space. And then we have lots of new folks. Thanks for participating in that with me. I'm going to take a moment to introduce the team behind Cohort today. I'm Jess Jackson. I'm an instructional designer here at Torrance Learning. I'm also the Cohort host, so you'll be hearing me on these web sessions every week. We have Aaron and Jamie, who are our behind-the-scenes crew. They produce Cohort every week. They help us run smoothly, so we're really grateful for them. Aaron right now is fixing up the behind the screen for me as I speak, so thank you, production team. I really appreciate you. And then we have Matt on the line. Like I said, I'm an instructional designer. I'm going to do a very geek-free coverage of what xAPI is, but if you have more technical questions, Matt will be on the line to help answer any questions. So feel free to do that in the chat or in Slack. Again, want to shout out our friend the Gnome, xAPI Gnome on Twitter. You can follow along. We share the weekly web sessions on that Twitter page. We send out xAPI cohort updates and reminder. We share out general xAPI events and news on that Twitter account. So feel free to follow, engage, and share, retweet. Alrighty. So let's talk a little bit about what xAPI cohort is. So the xAPI cohort is that, I think someone is muted, or is that coming from me? Sounds like someone's eating potato chips. Yep. All right. Can you all hear me okay? Let me know in the chat. Alrighty. Better now? Perfect. So the xAPI Learning Cohort, the best word in that sentence right there is free. So if you paid to get here, you need to get your money back. This is a free, one of the largest that Megan and I know. Professional development experiences that is free. It is virtual. You can meet up in real life. There are some folks I saw you talking about what schools you root for and where you're living. You can absolutely meet in person, but it is mostly virtual. We have web sessions, we have Slack, we have GitHub, we have lots of opportunities to communicate and engage virtually. It is vendor neutral. That means that we're not here to try and sell you anything. There may be some vendors that have lots of experience in the xAPI space, and we appreciate and love engaging with them because they help advance our knowledge. Some of them have even developed the specification itself. But what our promise is that we're not here to try and sell any platforms, any tools. We're just here to help learn together. And it's a 12-week learn by doing project-based team learning experience. It's all about community. It's all about working together. It's all about trying things, breaking things, messing things up, and supporting each other throughout that process. So if you're ready to just try and learn some xAPI, welcome. If you've done this in the past, we're so glad to have you back. It happens in multiple spaces. We have weekly web sessions. So welcome to the first web session. It's on Adobe Connect, Thursdays 12 to 3 Eastern Time. We also record these web sessions and share them freely. We have a YouTube channel where we host the web sessions. If you are in Slack, you will get free access to the web sessions the day they happen in Slack, and then we share them out on Twitter and through a mailing list on Friday. And then we have project teams. And the project teams meet in Slack and on GitHub, and they're working together whenever, and that's how you're experimenting with xAPI. We send weekly emails with updates and the web session recording. Awesome. I'm glad you like the YouTube. That was lots of teamwork that made that happen. I'm glad that you really like that. So this is our approach, how Cohort happens. For the first few weeks, you're getting to know each other and xAPI. So if you're familiar with Tuckman, you're forming, storming, norming. You're learning all about what project teams have, what is the structure and process of Cohort, who's in Cohort with you. Weeks 4 through 8, we're digging into those details. We're starting to look at what type of projects we want to be working on. We're scoping out. We're scoping, we're assigning tasks, and we're iterating. And then the final set of Cohort is all around demonstration and showing. The final set of weeks within Cohort is all about demonstrating and showing what you know. It's the application. It's the understanding what's in it for me. It's the next steps on how am I going to build on what I learn in Cohort. And that's the framework behind Cohort and how the learning follows. The practical application of that is awesome 12 robust sessions. So what you'll see on the screen right now, and I'm going to try and draw on it. Let's see. Yep. So we have a cohort topic session. And in this cohort topic section, each week, that's where we're doing the cohort business. We're doing team check-ins. We're sharing out project briefs. We're talking about what the xAPI Learning Cohort is. And you'll have 12 back-to-back weekly sessions from January 30th until April 16th. And then in addition to the cohort business, we also have guest speakers. So every week we'll have experts in the field and within the industry sharing out all about different topics. So this week we have 5 guest speakers, Kristen, J-Rock, Brian, Izzy, and Joanne. Thank you for being here and willing to share your expertise and experience from Cohort and what you've learned. But every week we'll have different presenters talking about different things. So for those first few weeks, we're learning about sending data from both e-learning tools and stuff that's not e-learning. Then we're going to learn about sending and structuring better data. We're going to talk about receiving data. We're going to talk about the state of adoption and what the industry looks like. We're going to learn about different case uses. We're going to learn about xAPI 2.0. And then we move into project team demos to wrap up the cohort. And just want to tell you to save the date now. One of my most impactful learning experiences of Cohort last semester was the party. I got to see so many presentations. It's called the party, but it's a conference. It's a free virtual and in-person conference where you learn from cohort teams and also industry leaders all about xAPI. So if you want to save the date, go ahead. It is going to be May 8th this year. Yeah, I see y'all are talking about different Slack channels in the chat. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the session today. So we're going to get into the bulk of the session and talk a little bit about what xAPI is. And again, I'm an ID, so I have an ID perspective. It's very geek-free. If you have more technical questions, feel free to put those in the chat. We have lots of experienced folks in the chat. And if you're in Slack, you can ask them in Slack. So we're going to do a simplified version of what xAPI is. First, xAPI is an acronym. So xAPI stands for Experience Application Programming Interface. Experience refers to both learning and performance experiences, not just online learning. So you could have an instructor-led training and capture some data there and input it, and you can use xAPI there. It is all about learning and performance experiences. And it is the specification for sending, storing, and retrieving activity around learning and performing. And many of us in the learning space, ain't no party like xAPI party, you right? Many of us in the learning space are familiar with SCORM. We don't want you to think about xAPI as the next generation of SCORM. We want you to think about it as it will eventually replace SCORM. And SCORM's not going anywhere right now, but eventually xAPI will replace SCORM. So think about a cell phone, right? Many of us have a cell phone. Many of us have them within reach right now. Mine is on the screen. Our cell phone is different than what the first iteration of a communication tool looked like. Megan gives the analogy of, I used to stand by a wall connected to a curly wire and call out, and then who I was calling to communicate with would have to stand by their wall on another box with a curly cord in order to talk to me. And that device was the only thing it did. That device, the only thing it did was to talk to another person attached to their wall. Now when I look at my cell phone, not only can I make calls, which I rarely do, but I can use it to navigate to work every day. I can use it to book my Airbnb. I can use it to do a Wikipedia search. It is doing all types of things, and as things advance, I can grow it. I can add more apps. I can add more features. So not only has my cell phone replaced that box on the wall, it is growing and growing in its capabilities. And that's how we want you to think about xAPI. The food was so good. I'm glad you enjoyed the party food. That is my favorite restaurant that you had. All right, so this is you. You're looking very intently at your work. You're focused on what you're doing, as we all do. And what you're doing here is this pipette is a learning record provider, and within the pipette is your learning content, right? So a learning record provider could be an e-learning course, and the content that we're thinking about is what's within that course. What do you think some other learning record providers could be? Tell me in that chat. Tell me in the chat what are some things that are learning record providers that hold learning content. Storyline, SCORM, Learning Management Systems, SharePoint, LMS, videos, YouTube, Customer Success Systems, Litmus, Unpublished Module, WalkMe. Right. So you all know, you have some idea of what Flip, Camtasia, chat interfaces, yeah, Twitter and social media, absolutely. So you all have some ideas of learning record providers. And the content is what you're delivering to people, right? Where the learning record provider is what's sending the data. Now, the content, in order for us to deliver the content, the data from the learning record provider, we have to do it in drops, right? It's coming from a pipette. It's structured in a certain way. It's structured like a drop. It's a sentence. And that's what activity statements and profiles are when you think about xAPI. It is how the data or the grammar, it is the grammar of the data. And right now, when we think about all of these different learning record providers that you just posted, the Twitter, the Internet of Things gadget, the phone, all of those things, how much of that data that can you collect and can communicate with your LMS right now? Currently, probably not much, right? So when you're using xAPI, what it enables you to do is it allows you to structure it so that it's interoperable, and what you need to use are activity statements and profiles in order to do that. And then it goes into a place. So it's stored in a learning record store. So this beaker, this graduated beaker that tells you exactly how much is in there, that's the learning record store. And when it's your database. And in that record store, there could be other legacy data. There could be data from your sales team in there. There could be data from your marketing team, your marketing impressions, right? Right, Stephanie, not a ton right now. So this is just a metaphor for what's going on with xAPI, okay? And when we think about xAPI, we know that we've been able to have data for a long time with SCORM, right? We know that we can have time, score, location, status. SCORM allows us to, we at Torrance Learning can create online learning, deliver it to a Fortune 100 company. They can put it in their LMS. They can collect some data. It's a little package. SCORM has been great for our industry. However, and we can think about SCORM as a vocabulary. What xAPI does is it's a grammar. So when you're using xAPI, think of it instead of just a nice, neatly packaged gift or a set of information, think of it as the Lego store. I can go into the Lego store and I can buy the Star Wars package. I can also buy the Black Panther package. I can also buy just random third-party Legos. And they all can work together and be interoperable and create something. So xAPI is a grammar. It is a way to structure, as long as it is structured with the same little indentations and surface, all of those little bumps and bobs that allow Legos to connect to each other, we can use them together, right? And that's what xAPI is doing. If we structure our statements in a interoperable way, and for the developers in the conversation, the grammar is not difficult. It's JSON. But the magic of xAPI really is in our ability to take all those learning record providers and all the data it can produce, and for us to like use them and leverage them together. All right. So why use xAPI? It'll provide some measurement. It'll provide some offline storage. It's learning outside of the LMS. We're not only thinking about e-learning. You can deliver and track training that's not in the LMS. It offers more targeted training. It correlates with learning performance, so you can actually use data from how learners perform. You learn more about the learning experience. So how much of a video are they actually watching? Are they just clicking? All of these things. However, you can do all of this without xAPI. The magic is not necessarily within how the data that you're tracking. You can do all this without xAPI. The magic is in the interoperability. It means that our data is not going to be in silos. It means it's not just going to sit in the LMS. You can take data from different places and have them all working together. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and we're going to go, this is completely high level. We're going to go into depth about what xAPI can do in each web session. But right now, I'm going to go very simplified into what xAPI can do. So step one, well, first, before you even start thinking about sending data, you probably need to make a plan for what type of data you want to what type of decisions and what type of data you want, right? But step one is sending data. So you can use current e-learning authoring tools. You can get a product vendor to send data. You can assemble things that aren't xAPI.
The audio keeps kicking out on her end. She's gone. She's gone again. All right, bear with us for just a second. Jess, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Erin, but we are not hearing you right now. All right, just hold with us 1 second while we work on getting Jess's audio back up. Sorry, y'all. We lost connection briefly, but you can, yeah, so you are sending some data. Now she's back. All right, the next step is to be receiving
Sounds
data.
like she's moving furniture.
Yes, okay, can you all hear me now better? Sorry, I had to run to our emergency backup. Sorry about that. The connection was lost. So, you got it? All right, everybody says it sounds good, so I'm going to move forward. The next step is about receiving the data. Now that you've sent the data from different interactions, you're going to think about where to store it. And that's where we had that conversation about a learning record store. You can store data within an LMS. So and if you don't know what an LMS is, there might be some folks that don't. An LMS is a learning management system. Some LMSs have an LRS inside. So that's something you can look and see if your LMS has an LRS to store the data and receive the data. Or you can get an LRS that kind of works like a sidecar alongside your LMS to store your xAPI data. Or you can create your own, and there is open source resources to create your own LRS in order to receive the data. Step 3 is to do something with the data. So now that you sent the data, received the data, now you can do cool things with it. You can do dashboards and visualizations. You can do personalization and branching within courses. You can make recommendations for content. You can create triggers and rules. And you can really evaluate robustly the learning experience. And that's what the process of using xAPI is. You're going to think about what type of data and decisions you want to make. You're going to send some data from different learning and performance experiences. You're going to receive the data to an LRS, and then you're going to do and make some decisions with that data. And we're going to talk about how to do that throughout this 12-week learning experience. No. All right. So we're going to move on to talk about getting the most out of your cohort experience. And this is where I'm going to lean on some of our past cohort participants. So if we don't have any questions, we're going to move on there. So one of the most difficult things, or some of the things that folks have issues with early on in cohort, is around, I don't know what type of project I want to do or what I want to work on for a project. Well, we have lots of projects from past cohorts. We even now have a GitHub that stores past project information, so you can go on this website and check out what projects have been done in the past. In Slack, you can see what projects are still going on. But what might be really helpful and conceptual is for you to hear firsthand other people's experiences. So right now I'm going to invite our panelists to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of the successful projects that they've worked on and share why they think that project was successful. So we can start. Kristen, did you want to introduce yourself and a project you've worked on?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Kristen.
Okay. So I am Kristen xAPI. I work with Team Pebble, and we were, our project in the cohort last go-around was to look at a up-and-coming e-learning authoring tool called Pebble that right now is all open source. An actual authoring tool is on its way, which is a good reason to join Team Pebble this go-around. But it's a code base, basically, that you can use to take an ebook and make it interactive, and not just make it interactive, but also send xAPI statements. So I think our overall, our project was wonderful and perfect in every way, but the thing we got most out of, at least for myself, was we looked through all of the statements that were being generated from the tool currently, and we went through them and talked about different use cases, different ways people might want to use that data, might want to search for that data or filter it in an LRS, and what would be most useful for the learning designer. So if something is coming back that a learner preferred an object, if the verb coming back was preferred, is that meaningful? If it's not meaningful, what would be more meaningful? And with that activity, we also built things and sent some test statements. But that activity really, even though it's a kind of not what we initially intended to do, which I'm sure we'll talk about, it was really, really valuable. And it's helped me in like my actual work, my day job work, where I've been working a lot with tin can statements and doing that same kind of analysis.
What's going again?
Did you guys want more than that?
Thank you.
That good for?
No, that was perfect. J-Rock?
Yo, okay. My name is Jonathan Rock, a.k.a. J-Rock on the cohort. I've done 3 of these. The one I want to talk to you about is, can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
okay, you can hear me.
You.
Okay. All right, so the one that I want to talk about is the first one that I did, and it was an awesome group. It was David Jumeau, who's in the chat right now, and Stuart Claggett. And the reason that one felt successful to me, we basically, sorry, I should tell you the project. The project was, we worked on Unity 2D. We each had like one big vision of, we want to create a 2D video game that has a learning aspect aimed at environmentalism. And so for me, I got to design kind of a Metroid-ish level where you learn about the carbon footprint of your household, how much energy devices in a inactive state are actually still siphoning off the grid and that kind of thing. And so the thing that was great about it was, well, I did what maybe a lot of you are tempted to do that are starting off. I joined a ton of the groups, of the teams, and I recommend that you do that. After a while, though, I focused down to the one that most lit me up and that I wanted to learn the most and put the most into. But I stayed as what we call a lurker in the others, meaning that I'm on their Slack channel, I'm reading their posts, I know what they're up to. So you can learn a lot even if you don't do everything. But I would recommend, if this is your first time, definitely get involved. Even if you feel like you know nothing about the technology or whatever, you can be a sounding board, you can ask questions, type in the chat, talk on the calls, but pick a few that sound interesting to you, get involved with them, go to because there's going to be meetings that we have outside of this one where you'll set up with your team. Be active, you'll get the most out of it, because there's a lot of new people that don't know anything about it yet, and this is their first crack at it, but there are also some really educated folk that know how to use xAPI, know how to use it to do the thing that you may be inspired by, and we can all learn from each other. So.
Awesome, Jonathan. Thank you for that. Brian and Izzy, did you all want to share?
Yeah, definitely. I am Brian Wanzer. Izzy and I worked on, most recently, on developing an Alexa skill.
Hussein printed this out for me. Do you know how to print this out?
Team Alexa has been around for a few different cohorts and worked on a few different projects. The one that we worked on most recently was an IT customer service skill where the learner interacting with the Alexa device was a support IT support person, and then Alexa was acting as the customer calling in, working through a branching scenario of how to troubleshoot and solve the problem, sending xAPI statements along the way. Izzy, is there anything you want to
add? Yeah, thanks, Brian. I was actually just trying to hold in my laughter from reading the chat. So my name is Izzy Lara. This is probably my 4th cohort now. You know, as J-Rock talked about, I kind of lurked for my very first cohort. I joined a whole bunch. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I still was able to kind of learn a little bit here and there. But yes, as Brian said, we worked together on our Alexa project. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about that project was that it's a learning scenario, but it's not using a traditional learning modality like watching a video or going through an e-learning course. So I really enjoyed using speech as a different learning methodology because I think it feels a lot more natural for people. It's almost like, you know, when you're talking with somebody else kind of thing, you know, you're learning at the same time. So I got to learn a new platform. I got to play around with Alexa on my own Echo device at home. So that was really cool and really fun.
We can't hear you. Joanne?
This is Joanne. I can go while we're waiting for Jeff. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear Erin.
Take it away, Joanne. Tell us what you did.
Okay, all right. So, all right. Currently, I'm working on early childhood education just because I feel like that's very challenging because it really is out of the learning management systems. But in the past, I worked on ebook and I worked on Twine. And for all of the projects, I felt what helped me to, like, it was just amazing that the people who went, you know, before me, the files that, you know, I could use and the help that they provided, you know, in the next cohort, even though that they weren't involved, but they jumped in and they helped the next group who was there. And I just the other cohort projects that are going on too, each week they report and you learn from them as well. And it's like the amount of learning that I've had in this cohort has been tremendous. We do see that there are a lot of instructional designers, and so we're really trying to bring people in from other venues, designers and subject matter experts and things like that, so we could really grow this. And I think just bringing in different perspectives, and I think a lot of people are afraid. They're like, oh, I don't know xAPI, or I don't know the technology. And I felt like, you know, the same with me. It's like I didn't know anything when I was going in, but we've learned so much from each other, and it's a tremendous opportunity. And I really, you know, just like what Jonathan said, is like just put yourselves in there, add your talents, and even if you only have an hour or two or something during the week, you could really help another team benefit, and you'll learn so much. You know, that's all I have to say for this question.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Joanne. Thank you for that, Joanne. Alrighty, okay. We're going to move on to the next section of advice, which is about creating a plan for building your xAPI muscle with Cohort. So we're going to talk a little bit about making a plan, how to consume some protein and the free resources to build your xAPI knowledge throughout cohort. We're going to talk about stretching that knowledge and collaborating with other fellow cohort members. And then we're going to talk about doing the heavy lift, which is working with your team regularly to prototype and strengthen. All right. So when you're creating a plan for what you want to get out of cohort, you should be thinking about the questions that you have around xAPI and what you want to answer during cohort. What would you like to accomplish in the semester? How much capacity and time do you have to commit to a project team? And really, what is it that you want to gain from this experience? I saw someone put it in the chat, like you really do get out what you put in. So I'm going to ask our panelists, maybe 2 or 3 people, can you describe your planning and preparation process within cohort? And also describe a little bit about the amount of time you dedicated per week to cohort in order to make that successful project. And anybody can speak on this.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So this is Kristen again. I think the thing that our team did best that helped us keep moving forward was weekly synchronous meetings. So a set time every week with a calendar invite, that's key, so you're not overscheduling around it, so you're not doing an ad hoc meeting every week and saying, oh, we haven't met this week, what time is everyone available? At the start, pick a time that works for everyone, is most likely to work for the most people, and stick to that. Have the call, even if you're not sure what you're going to talk about, just get on the call. And if it ends up being 5 minutes because no one had time the week before to do anything, and no one has time the week coming up to do anything, fine, cut it at 5 minutes. But have the meeting, have the call, and stick to that one commitment. And that works really well as kind of a keystone for the rest of the organization, or for the rest of the process. And the first meeting our team had was very, very open-ended. Some teams come together because someone has a very specific goal, and other people support that person's goal, which is a great way for teams to come together. I think that's really valuable. Ours was a lot more, we're interested in this concept or this tool. What could we do around it? And we had a whole big, long 1-hour brainstorming session together, and doing that made us all really invested in what we were doing. Gave everyone not just a voice what they wanted the team to do, but it also gave everyone an awareness of what everyone else was expecting to get out of it, so we could make sure that everyone kind of got their say and got what they wanted out of the group. So those are my biggest takeaways from the cohort, and definitely things I would repeat for this go-round.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kristen. Anybody else have any thoughts on what they did to prepare? And how much time they spent?
Yeah, most of it, the time spent to, like Kristen was saying, plan the meeting and make sure everybody can attend. Don't be surprised if the people on your team are all over the globe, and so picking that time is not as easy as you thought it might be. And then the other thing is to break it down and see what really is our deliverable. Stephanie, and I saw you in the chat say that you're worried about letting your team down or whatever. The cohort provides a nice deadline. Can we make a thing by this date? But the other thing that it provides is an audience, so that you can try out the crazy ideas you have and have other people that are interested in it share on how they think it's going, or share the ideas they have when they think about the thing that you're doing. And some of them are like Kristen said, where the team gels and you get a single direction and everybody's doing a part of getting the whole thing to that. The ones that I've been on have been more like jazz, where we're all kind of playing along. Everybody gets to do a little improv, and like for the Unity one that we started with, we each chose a different level. Like we compared ideas to have the main character. We had we called him xAPI Dude because we didn't realize it was a no-no to say xAPI instead of xAPI. We called him xAPI Dude, and everyone kind of had this similar design for the main character, but then designed their own level completely separate. And the last one I did was kind of silly as well, as the Dungeons and Dragons. Can we get learning events in first-time players of Dungeons and Dragons? Can we generate statements from the choices they make? and use that to help either train them how to do better or fit in more at the table or something like that. Kind of a silly idea, but really getting into what from the real world can we capture with xAPI that never would have been possible with SCORM or an LMS or that kind of thing. So the deliverable is not so much a finished product that you can like market and sell or something that people could take. It's awesome when that happens and you can have people take it and give you feedback, but the deliverable is like your knowledge and understanding about the technology. And even if it's like, I haven't mastered it yet, I've gone from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 4. That to me is the deliverable, is getting more comfortable with this technology and then getting more ideas. And what that usually looks like is it starts off with, how can I get a thing to send statements? And once you do that a few times and get comfortable with it, then you start thinking about it more strategically. What kind of statements do I need to, what kind of information do I need to know to make a decision? What are the business decisions, and are there things that are black areas, gray areas, dark areas that we don't know enough about that we could use xAPI to generate the statements that will help us to make those decisions? For me, that's been kind of one of the organic parts of this process, is you start off with, can I make a thing do a thing? And then as your comfort level with the technology builds, you start thinking, okay, what are the actual possibilities here, and how can this make my life better? And that's why I think this is an exciting group. And it's a place where you can screw up and you can let people down and you can try something that you're up till 4 in the morning trying to get it working, it just doesn't. And that's okay, because it's not about making something by the finish line. It's about moving towards a better understanding and ability to use this stuff, if that makes any sense at all.
That was perfect. Thank you, J-Rock. So some things to include or think about in your plan as you're wondering, can I get this to make a statement? Your team is going to need a team name, a Slack channel, a project brief that includes the question or area to explore, the use case to provide context for your project, time, a means of meeting, a statement sender and LRS, and we'll talk about the free things that we can offer and that you will have access to around the 3rd week of cohort. You'll get a lot of free stuff. We collect a weekly update from your teams in GitHub, and then we also rely on someone to give it during our weekly web sessions, and then you can have the optional GitHub repository to store your codes and data. So, protein, consuming free resources. Like I said, we do have some free resources that will be shared with you around week 3 or 4 within cohort, and that includes LRS, LMS access to play with. But I'm going to ask maybe one panelist to share what free resources really helped you when you were strengthening your understanding and application of xAPI.
This is Joanne. I could respond to that. The Tin Can registry lists all the profiles, and all the verbs are there, and it's just such a wealth of knowledge. But what I also did is I went onto like YouTube, and I would just listen to past projects and listen to, because there's a lot out there I've been posting, and I would just listen to what they did just to see what was possible, and then it would just give me ideas of, okay, if they did this in this realm, how can I then, like, again, I'm trying to do it in the early childhood realm where most everyone else is doing it in like the higher education or the consumer business realm. And so it's like there are such correlations between the projects, and I just find that just everything that people that have done in the projects before, and all the postings like on GitHub and Slack, and if you just comb through all of those projects, and look at their postings and like the troubles that they've had, and that will just cut down the time that you have to invest in it as well. But there's a wealth of knowledge that people have put out there, and it's like we really are standing on the shoulders of the people that went before us.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Joanne. Some of the free, just to give you a preview, cohort members get access to a library of free stuff, including LinkedIn learning courses, authoring tool licenses, statement generators, all types of things. Slack also gives you immediate access to experts in the field, so feel free to ask anything to any of them. And then, of course, we host our web sessions on YouTube after we do them weekly. So attend and watch and repeat watch the web sessions to get information from our presenters. So as we continue to stretch as we continue to build our xAPI muscle, we got to stretch, right? So you're going to be collaborating with fellow cohort members to design and or select a project. Here I'm going to ask one of our panelists to share a tip on collaborating with others in the cohort. What would you tell someone who's interested in joining a project and collaborating with other people to get them started? Jessica, I like that tip. Resources, channel, and Slack has past stuff, so digging through that is a good start.
Hey,
Something
Brian,
that was really helpful.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. No, you
all right. Well, I will echo one of Kristen's points earlier. When you aren't in a team, I think a super helpful thing is to find that weekly meeting and make sure that everyone sticks to it. It's super helpful to be able to have that time set aside, especially from the beginning, to be able to collaborate with those people on your team. And then I think as you're searching for a team too, I think J-Rock mentioned it earlier as well, is hop into some channels. Join, ask some questions, introduce yourself. You don't have to be necessarily an active participant in each one, but being able to see what people are discussing, what people are coming up with, what their idea is might spark something for you, and you might be able to hop in and help out a little bit or just follow their progress. And then as you're searching for a team too, I think if there isn't something that's interesting you in the main channel in Slack, go ahead and throw out your question, throw out your idea. And there's a bunch of people who are excited about helping out and jumping in and answering those questions. That maybe you start to create a team organically and find those people that are also interested in that thing and sort of take off from there.
Awesome, thank you. Kristen, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think helped our team was that we had not super defined roles, but we had things that we knew the others were good at. So Judy has a lot of knowledge about Pebble because Judy works with Pebble all day long. So she served as kind of our SME and helped get answers to questions that we had. Cassandra was on the team and is a good coder. And because Pebble right now is a code base, we needed someone who was good at coding to kind of start setting up things for us to set up templates that we could then work off of. But it was really helpful for that stretching to have someone who really had that expertise do it, do something that played to their strengths, and then we could all stretch ourselves in a more reasonable way for this 8 or 12, I don't remember how 8-week cohort. So we weren't trying to completely do things that were totally out of our realm, but we were helping each other, helping support each other so that we had a better chance of doing those things and learning new things.
Awesome, thank you for that. That's true. Leveraging the strengths of those within cohort, I will. So that's one of my first tips is use Slack to ask for help. We don't all know everything. Feel free to ask the people that might know things to help you out. Engage on social media. So you can use the hashtag xAPI cohort and even look at the hashtag xAPI, and that tells you what's happening on broadly, more broad even outside of the cohort around what's happening with xAPI. Review the team sites for context on past projects and their Slack channels. And most importantly, we are all here to collaborate and forge community with one another. We're all learning. Sometimes when we're learning, it might be difficult. Play nice. Use respectful communication on all of the platforms and recognize that some of us don't know all of the things. So you might have to explain it a little more for us. So, and the last part is to work with your team regularly to prototype and strengthen. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask if one panelist wants to talk about their process for working with their team, but I think that we kind of covered setting up meeting schedules, getting it on the calendar, paying attention to time zones. If there's anything else that one panelist might want to add, they can. All right, I'm going to go. So some advice or tips that we pulled from other cohort members is to hold regular team meetings and record them for your team members who cannot attend. So some teams use Zoom, and you can record right on Zoom. Add structure to your meetings, agendas, calendar invites, and be cognizant of different time zones. And include follow-up actions and notes. Use collaborative tools. I saw, Izzy, you put that in the chat, like Google Docs, Google Sheets. Iterate, iterate, iterate. You're going to break stuff. You're going to mess stuff up. One week it might be running perfectly. You add in a different activity, and then it doesn't work. And that's fine. Keep doing that. Keep working. Keep playing. That's the point of cohort. And then when we're in the demonstration phase, even if what you have is not perfect or final, show it, share it, talk about it. You never know how you're going to gain more information just by talking to other folks within the cohort. So there are different ways and different levels that you can engage and participate in cohort, but first we want to let you know about the Apache 2.0 license, which essentially which is all cohort projects are under. It means you can't sell them and you can't sue your team for the information. It is open source. We're all working together. Then we have 3 different modes for participating in cohort. The first is project mode. I have an idea. I know what I want to work on. I'm going to go in and set up a Slack channel. I'm going to create a description. I'm going to invite people to work with me. Or I see a project that aligns to what I want to do, and I'm going to join that Slack channel and do this and continue to work on that project. I'm in project mode. I have enough time to do this and capacity to do that. The second way to participate is the observer mode, or what you heard J-Rock refer to as lurkers. So I have no idea of a project. I don't really know. I'm going to start checking out Slack teams and observing what they've been doing. I'm going to look at the channels and see what looks good. I'll join in, contribute to ideas, attend meetings, and do some work. But this doesn't commit you to anything if you're just joining and observing a Slack channel. And then there's the web session mode, which is I just generally want to learn more about xAPI, and I'm just going to watch the web sessions, and maybe next cohort I'll be more of an observer and engage slightly, and then maybe by my 3rd time I'll be ready to be in project mode, or maybe you're ready for project mode in your first cohort. But all of these are just as valuable to the experience. We don't want you to feel pressure to complete a project and be in project mode if really you only have time to be in web session mode. All of this matters. Cohort happens online in Adobe Connect, in Slack, on GitHub, and within a lot of other free tools. So we were going to talk through kind of Slack, but for what Slack is and how to use it a little bit. I'm going to go through this really quickly in the sake of time. I see we're reaching the top of the hour, and we really don't go over 3 o'clock, but we have some technical difficulties today. So in the Slack channel, there are multiple channels with, if they have team in front of them, those are teams. Most of our teams have been ZZ'd, which is our archive notation, because they happened in the past, but some of them are still out there. So go ahead and check up the teams. We have meetup channels. We have cohort-wide conversations in main, resources, and social. So those are all 2,000 people within cohort are in those channels. Then we have conversations that are discussions on certain topics and technologies. Those channels start with discuss. We have conversations around regions. So if you're looking to meet up, if you're looking to meet new people, those ones start with meetup. And then the cohort project teams say team in front of them. They can be company-specific teams, technology teams, or topical teams. So I saw Matt was explaining the GitHub in the chat. We're going to go more in depth on how you create a GitHub or join a GitHub later, but specifically we have GitHubs for your repository for files. We have GitHub for your team and your weekly updates. That's for us, for all of cohort to see. And then we also have a site that stays out for the world to see. So you can see our fall GitHub site has a lot of the team project briefs, files, and progress from last semester. So it's at the top of the hour, and I'm going to just share some next stuff. So some good stuff to know is that we meet weekly at 2 o'clock. So next Thursday we'll have Leanne G. talking about sending data from e-learning tools. Our xAPI party, save the date, in Michigan and online is May 8th. And then if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me, Jess, at jjackson@torrenslearning.com, or you can message me in Slack. I'm jjackson. So let's get out there and make some things.